pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did I do this right now?
Sure.
Okay. Just to notify everyone that there will be the grand opening ceremony at the Sanford Regional Technical Center on Sunday, October 28th at 1 o'clock. And I think anybody, it's open to anybody, right? Students who attend or parents, or even if you don't.
School board members, yep, administration.
Yep.
What's the date again?
October 28th. I think that's a Sunday.
It is, yeah.
And there are other dates that'll be coming out very shortly from Kathy Sargent, who's the director, who's going to send specific student-guided tour information dates to board members and admin.
I think they're also going to have tours from 11 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. if people want to take a tour.
So one of the days is October 30th. That's a superintendent and administrative tour. Then the other one might be like November 2nd that you're going to get invitations to.
What was the time of it?
1 o'clock for the ceremony.
Is it like 11 to 3? Oh,
11 to 3:30. Yep. So that's for anybody who would like to attend. All right. Public input from the vice chair.
So the first public input session is a 15-minute session with each person having no longer than 3 minutes in which to make a statement. A second public input session may be held at the end of the meeting if allowed by the board chair. The speaker will give his or her name, address, and reason for speaking. The public input is designed for Noble residents only. The board chair may grant non-residents the opportunity to address the board. Statements concerning subject matter that falls under the law regarding executive sessions cannot be made during public input, for example, matters involving personnel.
Okay. That being said, do we have any public input tonight with our first section? No?
Moving right along.
Okay. Going to the minutes of October 4th. Anybody have any changes, corrections?
I'm pretty sure I was a mystery the whole time, so I'm happy.
There does seem to be a sentence that doesn't have a conclusion. Ms. Mallett asked about the...
Well, there you go. That seems like there's no...
Yeah, I was trying to remember what she asked.
So where is that?
Right before second public input, so second to last page.
Oh, yeah. She did. She asked about the,
What? Is it though?
Obviously
no idea.
I don't remember.
The preceding sentence was about vaping.
I know.
Yeah, no, it was, I feel like it was about, I think it was about the candidate night.
Candidate.
Who was going to the candidate night.
Okay.
There was nothing in here about that, so.
Right.
Because I know we did have a discussion about
I will amend those.
So she asked about the safety meeting and that people volunteer. Remember I was saying that was in the minutes and you were saying, no, I didn't see it?
Which, the safety one or the
It wasn't in the
candidate
minutes. But it will be.
Yeah. All right.
Any other corrections that anyone sees needs to be done? Okay, then if somebody would like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Okay, Becky, and a second.
I'll second.
We'll amend them, though, because we'll make sure.
As amended.
As amended, okay.
Yeah.
So,
Make sure they're amended. Yep.
Any other discussion anybody has? Okay, all in favor, approving them as amended?
Abstain.
Because they weren't here. Can we not do
So
them?
we don't have a call.
No.
Yeah,
So we have to
wait for
vote on them
meeting.
next time.
Okay, no form for that?
So that'll give her a chance to fix them and then.
Two assumptions?
I abstain.
I wasn't
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right,
So that will be continued.
yeah, to be continued.
So we'll go on to, what is it, October 1st, November 1st, something like that. No student report, Susan.
No student report.
No student report, no. All right. get my agenda where it's supposed to be here. Come on. This thing doesn't want to work. Okay. Second reading of updating our policy manual.
Okay, so the first one is EBAA, which is a required policy on chemical hazards. I met with, so in the policy subcommittee, Mr. Price is very helpful with the topic because it's something that he deals with on a regular basis in his line of work. And also, I referred to, I went through MSMA and through a couple of other school districts to see what they had on this policy as far as required language and so forth. It seemed to be that there was no standing model. I did find some other examples that we looked at during the policy subcommittee meeting. And then I had the opportunity to sit with Mr. Finley, with Dave Perkins, and with Adam Reed, who the two of them split the chemical hazards, the chemical hygiene officer position. Dave is a teacher in the science programs and deals with the chemicals, so he oversees that part. And Adam Reed takes care of most of the other pieces, such as the eye wash stations, the shower pieces in those chemistry labs, the open drains, the chemicals that come into the school that aren't for science classes. We have a pickup. Our pickup is done by an organization called Safety Clean. We went through 4 organizations to try to see which one would be the least expensive. It is a very expensive proposition to have chemicals removed, and we do a small stockpile of up to a 5-gallon, in a 5-gallon sealed bucket, that so that we don't have to have as many pickups. And then the other thing that we're doing in our labs is that we're cutting down from, if something was previously purchased in 2,000 in 2-liter containers, we're now buying them in 500 milliliter containers, half liters, so that the material does not age out. And if it does have to be disposed of, any portion of it, it's going to be cheaper for us to do. As you look at the policy that you received online, what you would notice is that anything in black is the current language. The first paragraph would be eliminated. The red would be put in place of that for the introduction. And then in the hazardous communications section, there was a beginning statement that cited the federal regulations. Most of our other information that we had under the material safety data sheets that are just now referred to as safety data sheets nationally is current. I went through the requests for purchases of hazardous chemicals shall include at least the following information. The 4 steps there are being followed. One of the pieces that Dave and Adam noted that they are working on currently is there is under employee training and information program, there's a section C. They're working on a PowerPoint to bring to a science department meeting that talks about training programs shall be conducted in compliance with applicable laws, regulations, and include the following elements at a minimum. So those will be covered in that. So the policy that's recommendations are in red, and then there's the black highlights that go through that of things to take out. And the policy would be a working document that meets what's going on at Noble High School. Noble Middle School is the other school that may have reason to have some chemicals on hand, but the chemicals that Noble Middle School has are typically grocery store kind of chemicals, acids, bases, acetic acid, acetic acid, baking soda, things like that. The other piece is that there is a requirement for access to, for fire departments and for administration and for the public within a business day's notice to be able to see what kinds of chemicals and what the status of those are in the SDS sheets. We have a program that we use that I was viewing that is completely, absolutely up to date as of today even. So I feel that along with the departments that we can provide that as directed. So this is the policy before you for consideration.
Is that program easily accessible in an emergency aspect?
It is in a, so Dave downloaded it to a CSV file, and then he added it to Google Drive, and then we can share it with specific people like Chief Goslin or a Mr. Dwarin and some other folks as needed. And that's the plan. And administrators.
So we're at the point now where we're accepting these changes of these policies, correct?
Yes, phase 2, yeah, second readings.
I'll make a motion to accept this policy as written.
Second.
Who seconded and streeted it?
Any further discussion, anybody? Okay, all those in favor of approving this? Anybody opposed?
1, 2, 3, 4,
Should be
5, 6. Who's
yeah.
this? So Rebecca, Joanne, oh, Denise. 6-0. Thank you. Second policy that you received some adjustments on, they were minor adjustments. It was policy JK, which is a required policy as well. It's on student discipline. There are, the major change in that one was just some refinement in the legal references and in the cross-references. And then there were 2 lines added. One is that any restraint or seclusion of students shall comply with applicable regulations and board policy. Please put a period at the end of that. And we are. And then students with disabilities shall be disciplined in accordance with applicable federal and state laws, regulations. And so therefore we also added the cross-reference of use of physical restraint and seclusion.
So that, we don't, do we have a policy on that?
Yes,
That we're
this is the,
so that's hooked
this
to
one,
this.
this JK, the
Okay.
black, is our standing policy,
Right.
which was last updated in 01, and these are the only changes in that policy that would bring it up to specifications in 2018.
Anybody else have any questions on that? Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept this policy as amended with the period at the end.
Becky, second.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of this policy? Anybody opposed? Okay. Moving on.
So the next policy,
Cell phones.
so this is JFCK, student use of cellular telephones and other electronic devices. We're just going to tell them to leave them home. No, I'm just kidding. I gotta look, okay. Just making sure you're with me. All right.
It's already been plastered on Facebook.
It already has. 10,000 hits on Facebook.
So the policy was last updated in 06. The language of it is still perfectly acceptable, meets requirements. The only thing that was missing in that 2006 works was the cross-references, of which we added computer and internet use policies and rules, the R section of this, which is the rules, questioning and searches of students, weapons, violence, and school safety and bullying.
There is a typo in G, second to the last line.
In G,
You're in by
Third
G.
word.
are you looking at
It's just one page.
this one, or are you looking at the rules?
Oh,
JFK.
Okay, sorry, did I go too far?
You know what?
Okay.
Is it the S that's on students?
No.
We'll get to that one in a minute.
Yeah, that's your backup one.
Sorry, okay, I went too far ahead.
And so then, wait a minute.
Yeah, this is not the R, this is just the JFCK.
Okay, so we have a separate sheet for the school rules then, okay.
I'll make a motion to accept this policy as amended.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving this policy? Opposed? Okay.
All right, so you notice that this is a non-required policy, so anytime it's non-required, what we do is we try to figure out does this serve a purpose? Should it serve a purpose at the school board level, or should it serve as a district guide, or should it be in individual handbooks? And it was agreed upon that it's best served to be a district guide. So in JFCKR, that's the rules for student use of cellular, well, I'm having trouble with that one, telephones and other electronic devices. So Section 1 was taken out, and the new disclaimer paragraph, the board recognizes that many students with an S cell phones and other electronic devices. These devices may not be used at the school or during school activities in any, that should say manner instead of matter.
Yep.
That disrupts the educational process or violates board policies or school rules. Then the A through E sections that were in the old policy from 2012 still pertains. Section F, I didn't see anything in there. In the new section, Section G, there are
Yes.
two things I'd like to note on that. It says, when on school premises, the use of personal electronic devices that violates board policy, administrative procedure, or school rules, or school rule is prohibited. And then further down, it says obscene, vulgar, sexual, it should say sexually explicit, so we will do a correction on that spelling. Becky, did you?
That was the typo.
Okay, great, thanks. And other than that, we did, once again, the cross-references were not previously provided in 2012, so you see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other policies that relate to this one.
So, in the middle school, only the sixth graders have to have a written permission? What?
I saw that, and I was curious if we
But
should
not-
change that to K-5 or keep it as K-6, because we're causing the school to have half the school
Right.
has to have written permission, the other half doesn't.
You're not requiring written permission, are you? No. Thank you, that's a great catch, K-5. Perfect.
To make your
I would say
life
that's
easier.
going to make it difficult.
We are seeing cell phone use at the elementary grades, and one of the most logical reasons for that, because at first people might say, what the heck does a third grader need or a fourth grader need a cell phone for? One of the things is the severe decline in the number of landlines that people have. So if a fourth grader happens to get home before an adult is there or something, there's no form of communication without a landline. So that seems to be a driving cause. So that means that they're in possession of them during the school day as well.
But they're not allowed to use them unless it fits into the curriculum?
Right.
At the middle school, the only time if we have a major track practice is canceled or involves a lot of kids, it's really been, especially this year, it's been great. I think a lot of our growing students have them in their bags or in their locker for Mother Nature or for a mother. They have to reach out, and they've been great about it, but we do recognize they have them, there's a need for them, but it's off and put away during school hours unless they have permission from us. They do great about it. Sorry, sir.
So I'll make a motion to accept this policy as changes recommended tonight.
I will second that. You're sleeping today?
No, I'm not going to second that. I already did all the work.
I think Dustin's asleep.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of this policy as amended?
6 in, right? Super. We'll get those out.
So that's the end of that, right?
You want to do next?
Huh?
Move first reading next?
Let me get back to my agenda.
That's what I didn't get to. Yeah.
All right, first reading of,
So just as a community notification, first readings are just to notify the public as to which policies are being looked at. And there's JFAA, which is a non-required. All 4 of these tonight are non-required policies by state code. It's admission of resident students. JLC, which is student health services. JLCCB, which is life-threatening allergies, and JLCCB, the R, which is the rules or the administrative procedure for life-threatening allergies.
We don't have to make any motions, but it just
Well,
goes.
it's just notification.
Was it to work on
Forward it to
a
the-
calendar date with Joanne
Yes, not with Joanne.
and I?
Yeah,
She's
because
leaving
She's in Thailand. Excuse me, she's not well. Don't talk people that.
Yeah, too late.
Shoot.
she's staying home for the next 2 weeks. Just say that.
Yeah. So the question would be, is there someone who would be willing to step into Joanne's position on that meeting, which the date is to be determined,
When do
to
you
work on
meet?
these.
Do you meet during the day? or-
Usually it's about 3:30-ish, but, it's flexible. We try to figure out what time works.
I have a complicated schedule at that time of the day.
Anybody else?
I would,
Street, thank you.
Oh, my God. I get it.
Okay, got it, thank you.
You guys will be scheduling the meeting?
Yes.
Between now and our next meeting.
Yes, between now and, I think it's November 1st, something like that.
All right. Financial summary update.
Yes.
Speaking of that, Steve, can you pass that red binder along?
It's only one, yes.
Dustin didn't sign it.
One for you and 2 that way. Thank you. Okay, so
Go back to Dustin because he didn't sign it. This is
the top section as usual, the top section is always the revenue section, the bottom section is always the expense categories. And as you look at that, you can see that 77% of the state subsidy is remaining. We do bi-monthly collections, we receive bi-monthly revenue. And then we have the local tax revenue fund balance that has been used. You see the 0% there because once you pull it out and use it one time in your budget. The category of other covers things like MILTI, Maine Laptop Technology Initiative. That's around $130,000 as an example, if you're wondering what some of those are. Tuition that we take in for programs such as Mary Bird and other situations that we have tuitions under, that's about $100,000. Sports fees accounts for a large chunk of that. So those are just some examples of what falls under other. And there's 99% remaining to be collected from that revenue source. Under the expense category, I think the one that people usually have a question over is, remind me again, what's under student and staff support. Regular instruction, I think, when you look at the number, almost $15.5 million, we know that we're talking largely staffing salaries and wages in there. Special education is self-evident, career and tech. Other instruction, she lists what that includes. System admin, that's the CO. School admin's pretty straightforward. It's the administrators in their offices. Transportation maintenance, debt service, and the other expenses, which are food service contingency and the Tri-Town Bookmobile. So the student and staff support covers things like guidance counselors, nurses, technology department, libraries. Those are all under that category. That's the one that we're struggling with the MDOE right now. It's Article 5 in the referendum every year. And for next year, all districts need to make sure that they can demonstrate that at least 60% of their expenditures are going to classrooms, and we were at 59.6, I think, or something like that. And the Article 5 is not ruled as being part of that same thing, even though it's the nurses and it's the usage of the tools in the classroom. It's the guidance counselors that help to make sure that students are funneled as much as possible into the classroom, situations resolved. So it's kind of a difficult uphill battle with the state to determine
Can I ask a question about that? 60% of all the money from the state has to be,
So Articles 1
does that
through 4.
include teachers
Yes.
and supplies?
Yes. Well, not all, but most, yes. It gets a little, there's a few things in there that supplies-wise doesn't count.
Okay.
Simple example, cleaning supplies that are used in the classrooms don't count. I mean, there's 7 or 8 different categories of things.
Okay.
Any questions on any of the percents remaining, or anything somebody just thinks, hey, what's this particular one? See at the bottom that we've completed 25% of the year because it starts July 1st.
So the balance that's remaining on all of these categories is money that we don't have assigned yet?
Bingo. Because you see there's one line that says percent expended and encumbered. So you'll see, for instance, in regular instruction, 93%, but there's still $1,075,000 that is remaining in that is available for use. That's 7%. But under regular instruction, there are some things that happen either seasonally or they're part of our programming later on that we know will happen but aren't billed.
Can you give an example of something in that category?
Yeah, let's try costs associated to in Lebanon, the Ferry Beach Ecology School.
That's what I was thinking of. Okay.
You being a former Lebanon teacher, I would think that would be one you'd say, yeah.
I thought that might have been what you were talking about.
Any other financial questions? Okay. I think I have the next one, the Tri-Town Select Board meeting, which was a week ago. They had a gentleman from MMA come down to speak to us, which I don't have his name, Derek or Garrett or...
Terry, do you know?
Garrett. Was it Garrett? He was very good, talking about how they really want to make the state and the communities communicate better and work together more on all of these town funding issues. We spent first part of the meeting talking about medical marijuana policies and the problems that basically all 3 towns are having in crafting their policies and the different places they'd gone to get different policies from, and how one of them was 8 pages long, but then there's somebody else they looked at, South Portland or someone, that's 39 pages long, and so they were kind of giving each other suggestions and so forth of ways each town was going with that, which was pretty interesting. There was some comment, one thing that was made that they would like to see from the schools is, I guess they're having a hard time attracting municipal workers, like town clerks and treasurers and people in the office that do the
Town managers.
town managers. And they used to have, and I think it was in Orono, they actually used to have a major up there in something that was municipal government that they no longer have. So they were asking if maybe the schools could get town managers or local officials to come into some social studies classes and stuff, to get the kids knowledge, give them information about this is how your town works.
We have a government class right here, right there.
And, because they seemed like, I think if anybody, social studies teacher wanted to contact them, that they'd be willing to come in to do that. So, that was one thing I thought I should bring back. Everybody was very interested in reducing the tax burden and getting more from the revenue sharing money, like the old days.
So what was the conversation?
Well, how shall I say this?
See, I was cheating. I had a note over here, revenue sharing.
It was interesting because there were 3 people running for office that were at this meeting, so it was like...
Did they have different positions? On it?
They really didn't talk to that because it really was not a political thing, but yes, they were. And Maine Municipal, I think, wants that too, and they seem to be hoping that they can kind of mediate some discussion between the two, because it's a loss of funding to the towns has hit them pretty hard.
Of course, that's up in the air because the elections will seat a new governor and so
Right.
forth, so we don't know what that will mean.
Right. There was some talk, needing more money for infrastructure, as everybody does, how to fund that. And one possibility, they said, could we increase the tourism taxes and use that money to rebuild the bridges and the roads and all that stuff. So that was one thing that a couple of towns are looking at. I don't know if that will fly when it gets voted on, but that's what they're looking at.
Yeah, some of the states are up to 14%, and Maine is at what? Are we at 7%?
Well, when you go anywhere, you go to Massachusetts anywhere, you get your bill and it's like this tax for this and tax for that.
And it's
there's like 5 of them.
It's an 11%, I think, in Massachusetts.
Yeah, so they kind of thought we might be missing the boat there, that way we could get money without taxing the people that live in the state.
Tax the use.
So, they also wanted to see a lot more apprenticeships, because trying to keep workers in Maine, and, we have all of these technical jobs like SOTC does and so forth that people are not going into, and they just felt that there was less red tape, there would be a lot of people that are out there and doing the job already that would be more than welcome to have apprentices to do that.
We have the perfect example in this backyard right here, because Pratt Whitney has, they've done some apprenticeships, but we haven't been able to crack that nut yet because of the insurances.
Right.
If our students are 17 instead of 18, it makes a difference. But, in order to have,
Yeah.
there aren't that many juniors, usually aren't any juniors who are 18, and
No.
it's rare to find beginning seniors who are in a program at SRTC who are 18 as well and meet that
Right.
requirement.
I think that was the red tape part that they were referring to.
That's very difficult.
There's a lot of people willing to do that, but it's just very burdensome with all the hoops you have to jump through, so. And it was a very good meeting, lasted about an hour and a half, and everybody, was very good, and behaved and listened to each other, and it was awesome. And they're going to meet in January for the next meeting, so.
Can you send me, Terry, do you know what the date is on that?
I don't say, they just said in January, and
All
that'll
right, so when they get a date picked, if somebody could shoot that out to me, I'll make sure we
Yep.
secure a location. Thank you.
That's it.
Okay.
All right, Facilities and Finance Subcommittee update.
So there's a draft budget ton. Yes, the B word.
Oh, wait, no, not already.
I said somebody's had too much free time. Look at this calendar.
We just finished.
Yes.
Wow.
The never-ending
Somebody's been home with nothing to do.
I'll give you one out of two.
So notice that, so we start off, we've already had a discussion at the administrative level, and on Tuesday, October 30th, we'll have an all-hands-on-deck meeting with the admin. That'll be a 9 to 2 day to go over of the entire framework for the budget and to go over each of the school facilities and talk about what principals and directors and cost center managers have on their radar. And then we have, by November 26th, we'll begin, the week of the 26th, we'll begin where those cost center representatives, there's probably 14 different cost centers. They'll come into central office. They'll present to Sue, Denise, and I about their individual budgets. We have a tick list that we look at for things that have come up over the year to bring back to them as well. And that we'll be looking at. For instance, here's a simple example. When Joe Finley plans his budget for the high school, and we look at the grant that we got, the $750,000 for the multiple pathways over the next 3 years, what's the build-up? What's the second year out of that? Do we have to absorb any money, or does that continue to be covered? And what happens in the third year? So, and what about student enrollments and things like that, projections? So we will then by June, so that's through the week of December 3rd that we'll finish up those presentations. They're typically about 2 hours apiece. And then we have Friday, January 4th is, so I have the school vacation stretch to pull that together into a superintendent draft budget along with Denise, and we share that with Sue, and she looks that over and gives us all her checkpoints on that, which is always fun. So then we'll be holding first and second round meetings with the administration, because once I get the look of what the whole picture looks like, and I get a bit of a feel for a percent, what's going to happen with that. See, because like it's never a static place. This is what it's going to be, because we don't get the insurance premium increases until April 1st, for instance, and you know that 2 years ago we didn't get the state subsidy information until 3 o'clock in the morning on July 4th, and that was a can we go home now budget. So there's some things that are moving targets. We know the workers' comp is going from a 0.88 up to a 1.24. That's going to cost money. We also have negotiations that will be going on with AFL-CIO and with support staff, 2 out of the 4 groups. So we have to take those kinds of pieces into consideration. And we'll work on approximations the best we can for that, because we've got to have a number to work with. There are several meetings that you see built into here for the F&F, the Facility and Finance Subcommittee. We'll be having some other meetings where it's not like the first meeting of that group is actually Monday, February 11th. There'll be other meetings that we've got.
That would be awesome.
Would you like that? The budget's done? Yes. So we'll be having other meetings in advance, but we have to meet with the group first to say, let's get some other dates on the calendar. You see that the district validation is on June 11th, will coincide again with the towns. We have the district budget meeting is at least 3 weeks in advance of that, which when we talked with, for instance, Chris Dudley was talking with us about that last year, saying, if it's only 5 or 6 days, what about the absentee ballots? What happens with those? Back that up. Yes, sir.
There's a typo there.
Where is it?
You took it off of my birthday and put it on something else.
Where's the typo?
The May 16th. We're not meeting on May 16th because you said that it wasn't available. You changed it in our last facility.
Oh, was it before that?
I think you moved it to the 9th.
You know what? You might be right on track, only because it's your birthday.
Because I remember saying, crap, I gotta be here for my birthday?
That's right, because it was the same day, that it was still a Thursday. Okay, so, and then we went from there, from when we need to start things off to where we finish things off, and then we built the sandwich in between, and these are the dates that we have at this time. So you might want to look down through those and like March 7th and March 21st, a budget decision sheet has to be determined by that date. That's Wednesday, February 13th, the Facilities and Finance Subcommittee drafts the decision sheet. So this is going to start hitting very soon.
So just so people know, that the district budget meeting in the gym is on May 9th, not the 16th.
Thank you. District budget meeting, May 9th. So there's the calendar. Facilities update. So Travis is on the Facilities Committee, Lynn is on the Facilities Committee, and Joanne is. Joanne, what would you like to say? No, Travis or Lynn, would you like to speak to any of the things that we're currently working on with that?
So we've been pretty busy trying to start the process of the expansions to our buildings. And we've got meetings scheduled with civil consultants to come in and discuss some of the steps and some of the potential prices that are involved in the process for the building our timeline. That's 3 to 5 years, a 1 to 5 year timeline for our expansions to absorb the growth. I think you sent that growth thing out to all of us, and I was kind of, I don't remember if it just came to the committee or it came to the whole board.
Yes, I sent that out on one of those Google Docs.
Yeah, so that was pretty impressive to see all the growth all over the place.
Yes, and I've already heard back from James Bellissimo at Berwick, who said, yep, that's great, I'll work with Google Doc and keep that updated, and I'll reach out again to Lebanon and to North. I think Jen Griffin might be like an assistant to the planning board, and so she may be the person to update that, and then the person here is, North Berwick. I'm sorry. Anyway, so I'll reach out again and see if I can get some updates on that, because my last update was, I think the latest one was in July, and as I drive around, I notice some other things that are kind of cropping up, so I want to just keep on top of that. Travis, you want to just do a quick hit on some of the things in number 2?
In number what?
Number 2.
So kind of the assessments that we're working on is, kind of what we need for the growth in our communities. And Hanson is one that the civil consultants is currently working on right now, is how to make that expansion there. And then a new Lebanon school for all the studies would be I think we're looking at getting rid of the Lebanon Elementary and adding that expansion to the Hanson School.
Yep. And we just did the...
we have a study.
That said it's not a structure. The work we're doing at the middle school, for instance, we're on phase 3. We did phase 1 and 2 years ago, and 2 summers and 3 summers ago, and we have one more year of work to do there. And that building should be in good enough quality shape to get the district another 30 years worth of use out of the school. So very good money. And then the Lebanon facility, not Hanson, but Lebanon Elementary School, the study indicates that it is not the kind of construction that it is and the base that it's sitting on that shifts 6 inches every 6 months up and down is not something that the community is going to continue to see good gain on the investment. So we have a very clear study on that from civil consultants. We talked in our committee about having a community night out at Lebanon to do a tour and to invite Neil Raposa from Civil Consultants in to talk about his study and share some of the points on that. So we'll be setting that up.
We talked about how it was important to work on the notifying the public of, what the issue is, how we need to address the issue, trying to inform them as best as possible so that we don't just hit them with this, big expense, because we need to prove to them that we actually do need this expense. So.
And it's a whole separate school facility that would more than likely be relocated over behind Hanson instead of in front of it, where Lebanon Elementary is right now, and that kind of a cost that's like a $10 million price tag to do that sort of work. But we're already doing things to help the cost of that out. For instance, we just had to move the wells, so we're making sure that the wells that are dug there, 265 feet, those should be ample for future use. We're doing the water treatment process out there as well. Then we have the sewerage. We had to do some work on the leach fields, and so we made sure that any work that we're doing will meet the needs of any future expansion connected to those pieces of equipment.
I was wondering if with the new construction, if we might want to think about somehow doing air conditioning in the building, because the summers are getting hotter, we've had almost 2 months of extreme heat.
Yeah, we had 40, 41, 42 days, over 70% humidity this year, which the previous record was 28, and that was in June. That was in 2016. So, maybe there is something to that global warming idea, or maybe it's a cycle. But whatever the case, we are seeing that. The state will only pay for certain portions of schools that are approved to have it, like library spaces, like main office spaces that are open year-round, maybe a pod or a wing. But right now, we're sitting in a structure that in 1998 originally was approved, began the process, and was approved for $34 million from the state, which was the largest, most expensive building project in state history at the time. Now Sanford's
We beat you now.
Yeah.
We beat you.
So what that means, and we have debt service left on this year, 1.6 million, and next year 1.6 million, and then there is no more debt service for the schools. That's a great thing, except for the fact that means that you don't rise in a list when you haven't reached a certain circuit breaker. So we wouldn't be qualifying for state assistance. And the revolving renovations fund may or may not exist in the future, no matter what. The plan would be to do a North Berwick expansion for certain components, which folks can talk about here, we'll continue to talk about in other meetings, to do for certain parts. It's not for classroom space, actually. Then to do the connector wing in the back of Huzzy Elementary School, and to do the replacement of the Lebanon School. So all three towns would benefit from the facilities plan, and also the funding that will, plus the middle school piece, we already talked about phase 3. The funding for that, the total cost would mean that in the future, 10, 15 years down the road, should other needs arise, that the district may at that point be at a circuit breaker, and then again qualify to get onto a state list for future assistance. But we have to see if there is anything in the future.
But I think as we're exploring what to do with the buildings, we could explore options. I know like heat exchangers are becoming very reasonable, and there's a lot of options rather than just leaving people to be miserable.
Yeah, I know that some schools in Maine do use geothermal, for instance. There's also the cost of the active photovoltaic cells has, the quality of them has risen dramatically and the cost has decreased. And then the passive cells that use the propylene glycol, I think it is, that goes through the tubes to help keep hot water heaters at about 110 degrees. Those are becoming much more accessible to school projects rather than just businesses. So there'll be lots of options to look into.
Okay.
And we'll have to work with civil consultants and with another firm, Witham's firm, which is Specialty Services, yes, to find out what the best options bang for the buck for the community and the future use is.
With the new school, would it also, I mean, the architects, I'm sure, know what they're doing more than I do, but there are certainly the physical plant designs where you can take more advantage of airflow or just, it's not going to cool off anytime soon.
Yeah.
And the trend is pretty clear. And to take that in mind, even though we're in Maine and not Florida, it might be time.
And you got to get that balance between
Winter and summer.
there's the natural lighting idea,
Yeah.
which also serves to heat places up and helps out at certain times of the year. You plant trees outside, shade tree, leaf-bearing trees to help keep the place cool. There's all of those considerations.
And a lot of the big box stores now are going towards being green facilities and having solar panels and things like that. So I think we could make it pay for itself.
Yeah, there's the first school in the country that I was aware of that went full roofage as far as solar panels goes was Wellesley Middle School down in Massachusetts, and I visited that school a number of years ago. Saw how that worked out. I've also visited a windmill farm. Looked at individual turbines as well. So we'll try to take advantage of whatever resources are out there that will make it as efficient as possible.
Yeah, we're
Without
definitely,
adding to CO2.
There'll be a lot of decisions between now and then.
yeah, we're definitely at the beginning stages. We haven't got anywhere near that
No.
stage yet.
Well, and it's a voter decision. There are school deconsolidation, a school decommissioning has to be approved at the state level. The decision to close the school and to rebuild on a separate site, those are all things that the taxpayers are going to have to say on. So we just have to do our work to show them that why these are the decisions that we're putting forward for the future.
Okay. Moving on our homework. How not to be a terrible school board member.
I can't tell you.
Solicit complaints from teachers and staff. I thought we were supposed to do that.
I think it's a balanced ledger is what it was referring to.
Get enough without soliciting, really.
So in that particular chapter, so this is just about a textbook that in order to try to get some retreat topics in with the board, this one that was available that says, besides just using the Maine School Board Association handbook and saying, let's pick some topics out of there, this was intended to be a tongue-in-cheek kind of way to look at some of the topics. And so in this particular school system, the Grandview schools, it talks about the importance of board members playing roles in the schools. The example I was giving at a previous meeting was a tour that Dustin had taken around the district. You tore it in another way. You tore it with your other hat on. So you're kind of there no matter what. And I think you're out of school every day, aren't you?
Just not ours, right?
Not yours, so.
Okay, so what this is about in the previous reading was that we encourage board members to feel comfortable to say that they would like to take tours of schools, that they would like to have the opportunity to meet and greet people and to have their face known as well. One of the difficult parts is after that happens, no matter what somebody says, when Travis walks into a classroom or goes someplace, he's either there as, even if his son is standing right there, he's firefighter Travis or he's school board member Travis. That's just the way people are going to see him. So it's about how do you when you want to sit and talk with people, how do you set a condition that is very clear? So of course they give you a situation that goes awry. This one says, hi, meeting with some teachers. I just want to come out to the school, hear what's going on here at the school. I'd like to hear from you about what's happening, any problems or complaints I should know about. Your principal's not with us, and I can assure you that I will keep anything you say confidential. So you've already set the stage for disaster, because it gives a false sense of security, and of course anything that becomes a concern has to be dealt with instead of how do you not deal with it. So then in these scenarios, people run down through really common things about, there's complaints about paper, and that the superintendent says, hey, we have to prioritize here, and the principal doesn't fight for us, and just silly kinds of examples. And the level of janitorial services is terrible and getting worse, and the principal won't ask the superintendent for a bus for something. So, it gives all those kinds of examples. And it says in here, it is your job to make sure that the district is running as smoothly as the superintendent would have you believe. So in other words, how to fracture relationships. Here's your chance to investigate work, see if the superintendent is telling you the truth. It might be painful to sit through 40 minutes of complaining, but it's part of your job as a board member. And then it goes into Plan B. Which of these where was this right and where did this go wrong? And it talks about that no matter how you do it, no matter how tactful and delicate you try to handle something, that board members should recognize that you never want to be a mediator between teachers and administrators, and that even no matter what purpose you go in with, things tend to degenerate in no matter what school system you're in or what organization you're in. This is particular to a school system. That it can frequently turn into something that dredges up every instance in which they feel wronged by whomever. So the key here is that it's not your job to resolve teacher-principal conflicts, but they give some recommendations to say that if you're going to go into that school situation, then you need to be upfront with them by saying, this is an open dialogue. I'll be discussing things with the administration as well. So there is no expectation of privacy. It's not like a secret back channel. And that also that the person goes in with a few talking points of your own about what the board is doing, always remembering that you cannot make promises on behalf of the board. So as Dustin went into Mary Hurd Academy, he's not representing the board. When you're out of a meeting as an independent person, you're not speaking on behalf of the board. So Nancy went to meeting last week, 2 weeks ago? Last week, time flies over having fun. So she went to the meeting last week, and so her job there was to hear the information and bring it back, not to speak as the board at the meeting. So those were always things to just be paying attention to.
If I recall, that's what I did with my tours too. I came back to the board and sort of went everything that I learned at every school.
Including the bus ride.
Including a very interesting bus ride, yes.
So it talks about a good long-term strategy is for the superintendent to work on building personal rapport and trust with each board member. She must also allow open and free access to all aspects of the district so board members can fulfill their responsibilities, but she must also gently rein in board members' rogue behavior, I love the term, rogue behavior.
rogue on this board.
Rogue behaviors when it threatens the district. So it's just saying that you have to find tactful ways to be able to say to somebody, that lane thing that I was talking about, that we each have our lanes and we're most efficient when we're operating in those. Any thoughts from anybody on that particular chapter? Or
Well, I noticed that when this school board member went into the school, she had a school ID.
yes?
We don't have a school ID.
But when you go into the school, they give
have
you
visitor passes.
an ID.
She said she took hers out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I can imagine if I was in like, I won't pick LA because that's too easy, but I mean, think of Portland schools. Yeah, Portland schools, and there's 12 different schools, 13 different schools, and yeah, you would have Portland board members, as I recall, I believe they had just nameplates that just said who they were and what a role is. So we're a much smaller district, but if people like those, boy, I can take care of that.
I'm fine.
You're okay with that?
Yeah.
It sounds like she wants it.
It does sound like she wants
It really sounds like she wants one.
You know, we have accoutrements to go with
Oh,
that.
this is true.
So appealing.
Anything
Are we
else?
going to do another chapter next time, or?
Would anybody,
I just wondered.
well, I was hopeful to do that because we, you know, it was such a crazy summer. We didn't get the retreat time and it just didn't match up with, don't give me the thing about going on vacation, and you can't go on vacation in retirement. That's just not a doable thing.
I'll just say.
She's on a permanent vacation, she's retired, but anyway.
Was there any other topic that people thought, this is one I want to talk a little bit about?
I'm just looking at the sections. Anybody else want to say?
Do too much homework.
Yeah.
Too much homework. So that's the technology case, right? I think.
Yeah. It is.
For me, I think the biggest lesson out of the chapter was the promising of anonymity. Anonymity. It's a very tough word. Trump can't say it either.
Amenities?
What word?
About anonymous sources and telling teachers that, hey, this is
Anonymity, is that what you're trying to say? Okay.
you know, staying between, we've had in years past issues where things were brought up and you want to, like as a board member, you're like, I'd like to investigate this too. Well, I can't tell you who told me because I promised, you know, that the sources were secret. And I think that kind of cuts the rest of the board out for the knees of our ability to do our jobs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, talking to staff, that's part of what we do. But the biggest part of that chapter I thought was pertinent was just to be open and honest that, yeah, I can't promise that this stays between us, you know. And it's going to go to the board and it's going to go to the administration because that's my role.
That's a really good point. When I first joined the district in 2012, there used to be winter conferences. We can't do that anymore because we got to match up with schedules for the other 8 sending schools to SRTC. But one of the things that was a little disconcerting to me on the first visit to a winter conference is that there was a session that was coffee with the board. I didn't think anything of it. I thought, well, okay, this is just how you doing? And I went in to that and I had some people going, well, this is not for administration.
But I like coffee.
I step out of the room while you talk with the board, and did people just come in? So what kind of a session is going on here? Right in the middle of the teacher workshop day, or ed workshops as well. And then there used to be administrator surveys, so staff would turn in surveys on administrators. And I asked a question about it, because somebody mentioned it, they said, geez, I didn't get that this year. And I asked the question, I said, well, kind of goose and gander here, if staff can do anonymous surveys on administrators, can we just send out something to all the families and students and say, here, you do your own your own
Did that.
ones, and people weren't too in favor of that idea. So I said, well, if we want to change that to be a broad stance, I'm in favor of it, but to do it as a singular act for one group was like, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to be divisive, or are we trying to build rapport?
And I noticed that when we did have the parents survey of teachers, the only ones you got back were the people who were delighted with you. You never got any constructive feedback of how to improve your practice,
Facebook is,
Yeah, all that's going on Facebook. Yeah.
We need it.
yeah, there's been a little bit of a shift in that.
Yes.
So I'll throw an idea out to the board and see if I get any responses on the next agenda. Okay, thank you.
Number 12, new hires, retirement, and resignations.
Did you bring her resume? Thank you. So we have one new hire. Her name is Amanda Richer, and she is taking over for the 4th grade at the Knowlton School. She has been actually subbing in our district for a couple of years. I did some work with her in terms of...
She's from Sanford, right?
I think she is.
I think
yeah.
I had her in school, and she was an ed tech in our building.
She's yes, she was, and she's been in Biddeford as well. She's from Springfield. Yeah. Stepping into a 4th grade classroom in October is never an easy thing, but she's already been in the building several times prior to even interviewing for the position, and she is stepping right in with the teacher who is leaving us. So anyway, she went to UNE. She actually started her world as an accountant. She told me the story that her teachers had always said to her, "You really would be a good teacher," and she kept saying, "I don't think I want to be a teacher." So she went into the business world and then realized that she really did want to be a teacher. Went back to school and got her degree, and so here she is. She's very, very excited. Has done all kinds of different things in terms of age range from kindergarten through 6th grade, and is feeling pretty stoked about being able to walk into the classroom. And
Wise choice.
I think she's going to do a great job.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that.
So there she be.
Then, so we would need a motion.
Yeah.
Well, this is a regular contract. It's not a long-term sub.
This is a regular contract.
So I
yeah?
would need a motion.
Yes.
Second.
So moved was where?
Dustin.
Mr.
Okay.
Okay. And?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
We appreciate that. And then unfortunately, I do have a resignation. One of our, such a strong world language team here, one of the newer members of that team, Katrina Aspinwall, she lives in Cape Elizabeth, she could throw a ball 2 different times, just throw a ball, run out, pick it up, throw it again, and hit the school. She's right behind it in the park. And they have an opening for a world language teacher in French for 1st through 8th grades to do some different things. It's a 3/4 time position, and it's going to involve some curriculum writing and so forth. Her house from here is 1 hour and 7 minutes. She really enjoys what Noble High School is doing, but it's a very difficult thing to add that much time to your day and have a young family. And she wasn't looking for the position, but the position opened up. I was in conversation with the superintendent there. My hope was to be able to keep Katrina through January 25th, so we could get the first semester in the grades and so forth, and keep that continuity. But the person would not allow that. And so December 12th will be Katrina's last day. That was disturbing to me because it's the former school district I worked in, and I was able to explain, we're not talking a luxury for a high socioeconomic status community of having first through 8th graders in a world language. We're talking about kids meeting graduation requirements, and it's a different standard that we need to be thinking about. But, you don't control all the decisions, and the most we could hold anybody for was a 60-day contract, so that'll be December 12th.
Do we have trouble getting applicants for languages these days? Or?
We received one today. That might be the only one that's the only one that I'm personally aware of. We have a really strange in-house potential opportunity, but I have to see how that plays out. It's several moving parts. It's not going to be an easy thing to either way we go. This is going to be, it's going to create a hardship to try to resolve this. Katrina was most gracious, willing to do whatever you can work out with the other superintendent and so forth, and it just didn't get anywhere with it. I consider it poaching, but I won't go there.
It's happened before, actually, hasn't it?
I did? Did that go outside my head? Or did I keep it?
Oh, yeah.
I hate it when that happens. Okay, you done with that?
Yes, I would need someone to make a motion to accept that resignation.
Oh, okay.
I'll make a motion to accept it.
With regrets.
With regrets, yep.
Second, someone?
She's been seconding all night. I was just letting happen.
I'm just waiting for you.
All right, I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
And, I'm glad for Katrina, I'm just not glad for us.
It's a shame they couldn't work that out with him.
Yes, I was hopeful that if it was going to create a hardship for us, that would give us a little flexibility.
All right, safety discussions. Is that you? Is that Travis? Is that both of you?
Oh, this is just briefly. So we held a community safety forum.
A week ago. The 11th.
Same time I was apply myself.
Yes. So we had a panel of we had two tiers of panels, probably 15, 16 people here to speak, and administration and folks from agencies, which we'll talk about in just a sec. And we had, I think we had maybe 25 people from the three communities turn out for that. I know the topic is compelling for people, but I also know that it was a rainy, not nice night out, and things happen, and there's lots of other things people are involved in. So you want to take a minute and talk about who some of the role players were?
Sure. So we had a panel of the one principal representing the elementary school, middle school principal, high school principal, the two SRO officers from the two buildings, as well as Ron Robert, who was kind of doing an overview of our safety procedures here at the high school, or in the district as well. I think that was everybody on the original panel. And then we had safety folks from the area. So Travis was here. We had state police, sheriff's department, Captain Locke from Berwick PD. We had Mike Barker, who is from North Berwick Rescue, and Steve Peasley, who is the chief in North Berwick. So there was that. And then Mr. Merrill, Steve Merrill from Lebanon. So we were well represented in all of our areas.
Tom Barron?
And right, Sheriff's Department, Tom Barron. Yeah, they were there. I actually said that earlier. Anyways, so we had a nice group of people that came through, and each of the panels just was able to kind of share what is happening in their worlds, schools, etc. And then we asked the safety, police, fire folks to speak briefly about what they're doing as well. I think we overwhelmed the audience a little bit. There was a lot of information, and then they were able to ask some questions, and we had, I don't know, probably 10 questions. We went a little longer than I anticipated. It was an hour and a half, but I think people felt good about it, and we have everything's documented. We're going to try to keep email lists going so people can be updated. We talked about it. My guess is that.
Doc, right?
What's that?
We got a doc.
We have a document, yeah, for folks. I think the reality of it is if an event occurs again in the school year in terms of in another place, everything will rise up again, and we'll be able to do it again at the drop of a hat because everybody was on board and very comfortable talking about stuff. We also, I don't know, Steve, do you want to talk about the Crisis Go piece?
Yeah, so we have a couple, Art Cleves, who's the director for York County Emergency Management, was away and couldn't make the evening thing, but he's made all our other events, and he would be someone that would be involved with the Mobile Community Center. The Crisis Go is an app that would allow us, we're going to be working with all the staffs between now and Thanksgiving to help them load that onto their phones. And what it does is it allows instant notifications, two-way texting communication. Somebody can say something's occurring in their area, or somebody can say, or administration can send out a notification, or the police department, fire department, who has the same app, and they can say, evacuate this wing or do something. So, or somebody can tell us that a person's in an area. It also allows us, there's a number of simulations on there for practice sessions for different kinds of events. It's everything from fire drills to active shooters to you name it. We also have all of our school maps loaded onto that so that first responders can instantly access that. We have, we'll have our crisis plans on that page, and you can only get through secure measures. So the other thing is that if you're a teacher in a classroom and you're saying, okay, I got 9 steps I'm supposed to do, I think, or is it 7? What am I supposed to do for this event? You open up, there's a quick checklist on it that says, in a fire drill, make sure these 4 things, the most crucial things, get to those things. So it's going to be quite a resourceful tool. Yeah, that's it. We also went around to schools and met with all of our K-12 staff to talk about how to what was Tom's slide on? De-escalation.
Yeah.
We did run, hide, fight. We did see something, say something with staffs. So, and we're reminding people that the things that we're talking to folks about aren't just about school. They're about today's everyday life in the new reality. That it could be at a mall, it could be at it could be at the Boston Marathon, right? It could be
In a concert.
anywhere you are. Right. Yeah. So we're saying to people, we're giving you skills for life, and somebody's goal is to disempower you, to take power, make you feel powerless, and our goal is to give you power, to empower you in those situations that are designed not to allow that. We'll be doing some other visits in schools and continuing to work on this. Chief Deputy Barron was very clear. He says, I wish I could get schools in our other districts in the county to do this. And he's offered his services to other places as well as our police.
It's good stuff. Good. Any other safety things? Okay, guess we're at other now.
I have one other. The Noble School, this is going to be a familiar topic. It's a different one though. It's the same amount, same department. The Noble School District Nutrition, I'll get through this, Services has received a check for $500 from Denise Foster for the MSAD 60 Noble Community Lunch Fund. Please accept this donation on behalf of the Food Service Department. So the request for me to you tonight is to accept anything 500 or more you have to act on. So I'm looking for...
So where's it going to go?
It's going to go into the Community Lunch Fund, which I'll tell you about that in just a second.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept that for that fund.
I'll second.
All in favor? All in favor?
All right, nobody said no, thank you. Okay. All right, so there's on the point of service windows, there is a button that an employee at the registers can press if there is an undeclared hardship. Someone's not on free lunch or reduced lunch or something like that, and there's a situation and the account's not where it needs to be, and so we don't want the student walking away without a meal on that day. And then the plan is that any time that has been activated for the same person 3 different times, then a notification goes to Tyler Goodwin in his office, and then there's conversation to the family to say, hey, you're not sure if you're aware of something. Now, I've heard from some members on the board, and I've heard from some other folks that there were people, kids being turned away from meals, or I'm sorry, you can't take that meal, you got to get the sun butter meal, and now we have to throw this one away, which just, if I'd had a wig on, I'd have flipped it. So,
I think you did.
yes, and it's just maddening to hear that. So, and it happened here at the high school, so I went down and talked with Kim Smart, who was not pleased, Smith, who was not pleased to hear that because it's part of her training program. So she redid training programs, and I would say to anyone, if you have situations like that where someone is turned away from a meal, please contact your school administrator and we will straighten that out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Awesome.
The board does, what is it, $2,250 or $2,500 towards that account for the year, and then we've had 2 $500 donations.
Yeah, that's great.
And then we had a parent last year pay out $2,500 to wipe out at the end of the year the North Berwick Elementary School lunch debts. Her father was an anonymous person, but her father was a principal, and she remembers in his, not here, either not in our communities, but I believe it was even out of state, but she remembers him as, when she was a little kid in school, that he was handing out money when kids needed lunches, so she does that in his honor. She's been, yeah.
There is hope for humanity.
Anybody else have any others?
Can I have permission, 30 seconds on a new format for the middle school parent-teacher conference? I think if I was a board member, I'd like to announce I have to go up for this.
Mike?
I think we're into the public other.
Maureen, are those on over there? Yeah. They're on, okay.
So quickly, Mike Roberts, principal at the middle school. New format, I think the remind message went out maybe 6:30, 6:45 tonight for parent conferences, teacher parent conferences. And if you put the 2 nights together, the 2 November nights, which I think might be the 8th and 15th this time around, I'm not sure where the March dates are, there's only 28 slots available. And I think some of the reason I'm wanting to make sure you folks knew this is I think some of the appropriate concerns might have gone to your level in the past, because if you have teams of 4 or a team of 100 students and there's only 28 slots, you're only offering 28% to those teams. And sometimes at the middle school, we've done partners, so the 28 slots doubles and you can get up to 56% of the team. Not good enough. So this year, what we're trying, starting in November, is having the conference with what we call the team room teacher only. So sometimes you want to meet with the math teacher or the ELA teacher, but families will be able to sign up with just their team room teacher, because that's the teacher that knows through relationships how students are doing in all their classes and what they might be struggling with. So the 28 slots, knowing that our team room teachers have anywhere from 13 to 18 or 19 students, it's a guaranteed 100% opportunity that all of our households and all of our families can sign up for a 15-minute conference and meet with their team room teacher. It might be, I'm here to meet with Mr. Price, and Mr. Price is going to talk to me about all the classes, but it does guarantee that all the moms and dads can come in and meet. We are encouraging students to be there. It's not quite student-led conferences yet, but it is definitely student recommended that they're there. But the point is just an FYI to you folks that at least for starters, there's an opportunity for every household to have a conference, and then we'll see where that takes us. So just a quick FYI for anyone.
Is this just for the middle school, or is this?
Yeah, and Joe, if I call Joe, I want to wait. I have not spoken to Joe Alley. I don't really know. For us, I mean, we've had great conferences, and we're always sold out, so to speak, especially in November. We usually pack them in also in March. But I also know that the ladies in the office and myself, we've been getting 15, 20, 30 very appropriate upset calls because I can't book a conference. Now, with Infinite Campus, a lot of household, there's a lot of information there. There's a lot of evidence. So we're almost at a point where on a Saturday afternoon, any mom and dad can find out most of what's going on. But the face-to-face piece is pretty crucial to begin with. And it's nice to be able to have an opportunity to say, no, at least you can have 10 or 15 minutes with Ms. Volner or whoever it might be as your team room teacher. It's a start. If it works, I'm sure Joe and Al would want to know about it. And the high school might make some changes, or we might have some adjusting to do after we're through, like we kind of missed the boat on this one, but I don't think we are. That's it.
Glad to hear it.
Thank you.
So I think we're into the other section. No, I mean to the public input section.
I think we jumped right into it.
Right.
Just a wicked quick other.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Just to remind everybody that your Noble Knights football team is making the playoffs. They're currently 5-2.
Wow.
That's excellent.
Going for their 6th win of the regular season against Gorham. We need all as many fans as we can. 6 o'clock at Gorham.
That's,
Are you going
Come on,
to
watch your Knights.
announce the
you
game?
said 6 o'clock.
I believe it's at 6. It's at 6.
Guys back
It's
there.
not 7 o'clock?
6.
It's at 6 o'clock. And then the girls' soccer,
Girls soccer is tomorrow at 4.
say that again?
Girls soccer is at tomorrow at Portland at 4.
At Portland, Fitzpatrick Stadium.
Cool.
Any other fall sports? Moving on.
No, I think that's it, because the golf is finished up. And the cross-country, I think, finished up for us. Anybody know?
Yeah, cross-country people over there.
I heard something about a
We're
banquet,
still in other.
a banquet coming up maybe Friday night,
For what?
cross-country?
Cross-country's coming up Friday night, yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other others?
That's all I have.
Sure.
I'm just very excited. It's been a long time since football's been.
They're going to let you announce in Gorham. That would be
No, they're not
great.
going to let me announce and go.
I'd even go. All right, we have another session of public input, if anybody is wanting to input.
I'm Russell Nadeau, 62 Summersworth Road, right here in North Berwick. I got 2 children. My daughter's a senior at Noble. My son is a kindergartner. I was looking for a little clarification. I know that it was on the agenda today, the allergies, and I'm not really sure. You weren't very loud. I couldn't hear you as far as what's going on. Is it a meeting between you and Mr. Conley? Is that what's going on? To discuss the policy?
There's a thing called a policy subcommittee.
Yep.
So we have a couple of different subcommittees. In the policy subcommittee, what we do is we will take policy, generally it's policies that are either state required, you got to get in there, this is a new law for restraint and seclusion or something like that, or these are outdated policies and we need to update. So there's some reason that we're looking at a policy. And then what we do is the first reading is a notification to the public that this is being discussed. Then there is, it goes to the subcommittee. They look at what the current language in there is. We look at any models that exist. This one wouldn't be a model from Drummond Woodson, which is a law firm, or from Maine. Do you mind if I give this? I think
Go right
probably
ahead.
people would say, hey, this is good stuff to know. I'm sure these guys are saying, stop. So there's a Maine School Management. Typically, if it's a required policy, usually they'll put out a model of it to help to assist schools and boards in formulating theirs. Since it's a non-required policy, I believe, But yeah, since it's a non-required, they don't put out models for it. So then what we'll do is we will cull policies from neighboring districts or somewhere typically in Maine, because sometimes, one state to another has some different requirements depending on their laws. And then we will shop that in the session, in the board policy subcommittee. And then there'll be some ideas thrown out. We'll look at it. Some of the drafts I was talking about tonight, I would say there's a red section in there. Those are drafted in the subcommittee. Then they go out to the board members. Typically, we try to do a week before the second reading comes up. At the second reading, the board has an opportunity for public input to talk about what's in there, to make some decisions about it. Sometimes policies are approved. Sometimes there are amendments made to them and they are then approved, and sometimes they're tabled, like people say, we want more information on this. So that's pretty much Did I miss anything?
So when are you guys discussing it? Because I know you mentioned something.
So I think the next, when are we discussing it?
Yeah.
We haven't picked a date for that yet, for the subcommittee work. But are you talking about this board?
Well, I'm talking about whoever's going to address the issue. I've been here 3 times, and I want the issue actually addressed. So you're going to talk about your allergy policy? So
Yes.
let's talk about the allergy policy. Let's put it somewhere. Why don't you make a date for it? How about that?
Not sure it was called for, but okay.
I mean, sir, he's frustrated because it's a matter of life and death.
Well, they have to set up a meeting between now and the next 2 weeks.
Right, so some of the troubles with this is anything related does move slow, and I apologize for that. We're kind of hampered by our schedule. The policy subcommittee, half of the committee isn't here today, and very happy that the street have volunteered to keep that going, so that's going to get it going faster as well. We just have to decide on a date between the two of us when we can meet, because it is on a volunteer time, not based on an actual board schedule. Typically, it's been 3 Thursdays, I think on Wednesdays, but I'm not sure. It's just been with me and Joanne, so since we have a new member, we can try to work something out. This is very much in good faith. We're doing what we can. Like I said, it's a non-required policy. I requested myself to add it to the schedule to address the concerns. So we're doing this as fast as the board possibly can.
Okay. And how am I going to, do I email somebody to keep updated of what's going on, or do just keep coming to the meetings, or what's the easiest?
So what I think you're going to see is within the next 2 weeks, the subcommittee is supposed to be meeting to discuss the policy. And then like tonight, we had, before we went to the first readings, where you heard about the allergy one, we had the second readings. So my assumption is within our next meeting, which is sometime in November, the first week in November, first Thursday in November.
Which I think is November 1st.
That'll come up, that should come up as a second reading.
Okay.
The second reading means it'll come up with the policies as they currently are, plus any changes that we feel are required. So we'll sit there. Mr. Connolly's usually really good at bringing 3 or 4 examples from other school districts. Say, here's what other folks are doing. Here's what I think we should do. We'll sit there and talk, disagree, come up with other things, and then come up with what we think is the best version of the policy. Sometimes there's no change because, hey, we are good.
Okay.
And sometimes there's room for improvement.
Perfect.
But that's where the policy works on.
That's the end of the first. Thank you.
Any other public input? Okay, I think we're ready for number 16.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay, see you
Wait,
in,
who was the second?
so November 1st.
Was there 6 of them?
Yes. Did we vote? Are we all in favor? Okay. Yeah, we'll just vote on that. You need to sign.